some jaw-dropping allegations against his parents that he was kept inside an 8x8 box inside the garage of their $1 million home. Inside that box, a box spring, a camera, a desk, and a bucket. The Ferreters have now been charged with aggravated child abuse, and tonight we take a look inside their world to try to understand why this family and why these parents would build a box in the garage for one of their children.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thanks so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments, and this story is one that has you scratching your heads, but I want to begin with talking about being a parent. And those of us who are parents like me, I've been doing this for like 30 years of parenting. It's not easy. We know it's not an easy job. It's a labor of love. You do anything and everything you can to help your children, to protect your children, to give them a chance, right? But there are challenges along the way. And for some parents, those challenges are everyday challenges. You know, your child skins her knee. You know, your child breaks up with their girlfriend, or is having trouble, didn't make the team, whatever it is. You know, stumped with their homework, struggling with math or geometry, whatever it is. I mean, those are the everyday challenges that we all have that are not easy. But if you have a child that has some level of a special need, whether it's a mental issue, a physical issue, it gets even more challenging. And I think we all appreciate and absolutely understand that. But there is something, though. If you have money, I think the more money you have, the more solutions you have to some of these challenges and problems. I mean, money helps. It absolutely does. It gives you an opportunity to address whatever those issues are and get help wherever it's needed, whether it's a tutor or if it's a counselor, whatever it is you need. If you have the money, it gives you an opportunity to find those solutions, a better opportunity to get the help that you need. Because sometimes as a parent, you can't do it yourselves. You need that outside help. Now let's get to Tracy and Timothy Ferreter, who we're going to talk about this hour. From my perspective, they have the means. They have the means to deal with these challenges that some people may not have. They're successful. They are living a life that gives them some level of flexibility and the ability to say, hey, if we need help with our children, maybe we can get someone to help us. You know, if it costs us money, well, we've got the means to do that. So let's reach out and get whatever help we need for that child. And this hour, we're going to focus on what was going on down in Jupiter, Florida, where inside their garage was this box, a wooden box for one of their children. And I think there's just one really big question that we want to answer here. Why? Why would you ever think the solution to your problem is building a box in your garage in South Florida and putting a child in it, you know, with a bed, a desk, a camera, and a bucket? Why would that ever be the solution to whatever you are dealing with or trying to handle here? And that's what this hour, we're going to try to figure it out. We've got people who know a lot about this story who will be with us tonight. We also have a statement from the Ferreter's attorney tonight that may shed some light on that question. Why? Why? Why would you ever do that? Now, for a little more background on this case, Ryan Hughes from our great affiliate WPTV has more on this story tonight.
Inside the quiet Egret Landing community in Jupiter, down the tree-lined streets and at the end of a cul-de-sac, police say sits a house of horror.
This was despicable, and shouldn't happen.
Inside this garage, Jupiter police say a 14-year-old boy was forced to live in an 8-by-8-foot box with a mattress, a camera, and a bucket used to go to the bathroom. Meals were brought to him, but he was only allowed out, police say, to attend school.
Everybody's watching out for each other. So I'm really surprised something like this went unnoticed.
But police tell us the teen has been physically abused and confined to the small space since at least 2017. Today, his adopted parents, Tracy and Timothy Ferreter, in court, now charged with aggravated child abuse and false imprisonment.
I came outside yesterday and seen all the cops and stuff, but like I didn't think it was something like that. I thought it was like maybe they got in a fight.
Jupiter police say they first came to the home after the boy was reported missing by his mom a week and a half ago. 2 days later, officers went back, and once allowed inside, they spotted the small room with a deadbolt on the door. The boy was later found at his school and interviewed. Police executed a search warrant on the camera mounted over the mattress and say thousands of videos were found of the boy locked inside. In court, the couple's attorney argued the teen may have been abused because he has an attachment disorder with his parents.
It makes my heart go out to that boy, and I hope he's able to find the support he needs.
Okay, joining us now in West Palm Beach, Florida, journalist with the Palm Beach Post who was at a hearing today for the Ferreters. Katherine Kokal is with us. Katherine, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You're doing incredible work in covering this story. I wanted to start first for our viewers watching tonight. Can you set the scene for us a little bit about this home, this family, who was living in this house, and what exactly did they find inside that garage?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. Timothy and Tracy Ferreter lived in Jupiter and Palm Beach Gardens, both in South Florida, from 2004 through 2017. In 2017, they moved out to Tucson, Arizona, and came back here to Jupiter earlier this year, late 2021, early 2022. They were arrested February 8th, and the events that led up to their arrest started when their 14-year-old teenager ran away on January 28th. They were missing for 3 days, and they were found on the grounds of their local Independence Middle School on January 31st. That was when Jupiter police kind of learned the extent of the alleged child abuse in their home. Tracy and Timothy Ferreter were both born in 1975. They have 4 children. The 14-year-old teenager we know was adopted. We don't know the circumstances under which that child was adopted because those records are sealed. But Tracy told police in Arizona that the child was adopted around 2 years old. So we know that the child's been a part of the family for a long time. And we also know from the parents and their attorney that they've had some escalating behavioral issues. And so the Ferreters constructed in December a room in their garage. It was made out of drywall. It had a wall air conditioning unit, a light up top with a doorbell camera that was mounted on the ceiling. It was an 8-by-8-foot room in their garage where the teenager told police they were kept up to 18 hours a day. We believe that this was done as a punishment, but the Ferreters didn't live in Jupiter long before their arrest. We know that they moved back in late 2021, maybe in December, and they were arrested February 8th. So they built this structure right after Christmas, and then the children, all 4 children that the family has, are now in custody of the state.
So 4 children. Do we know the ages of the children in the household?
Not publicly, no. That information hasn't been made public.
And do we know if they're younger or older than the 14-year-old adopted child?
We know that the teenager is the eldest of the 4 children. They also have a young toddler and then 2 children in between them.
And how about for those of us, well, I've been down there, but for people who haven't been down to Jupiter, I mean, this is a nice community.
Absolutely. Egret Landing is not gated. There are many gated communities in Jupiter. Egret Landing is not one of them, but it's an area that's better known for travel sports bumper stickers and children's swings outside homes. I live in the area. It's a place where people walk their dogs, they go on runs. It's just a very normal, affluent suburb of West Palm Beach. So it's known for being quiet, for being serene. Kids play outside. There's a community pool and there are community tennis courts. It's a place where people really feel like a community.
And you mentioned that it was the Ferreters actually are the first ones to call police or law enforcement because the teenager, the adopted teenager, actually ran away. So they're the ones who sort of brought law enforcement to their home?
That's correct. Tracy Ferreter reported the teenager missing on January 28th. And so that call kind of precipitated the events that led up to their arrest a week later. She called saying that they didn't come home from school that day. The teen was in trouble at Independence Middle School the day before. And so Tracy thought that might have something to do with why they ran away. But police came back to the house twice over the next 2 days before they finally found the child at the middle school. When they did, Tracy didn't want to let them in at the beginning. Police reports show that she didn't want to let investigators into the house to look around. Oftentimes, officers will look at a child's belongings, look for clues of where they may have gone. She originally said that she didn't want to let police into her home because her husband wasn't there. He was out of town. But they did talk her into letting them inside just to take a look around, and that is when they discovered the 8-by-8-foot room in the garage. She originally said that the 8-by-8 room was constructed as an office for her husband, but then she told officers through a conversation that sometimes the teenager who was then missing would use that room. It is worth noting that the room only locked from the outside, so if the child was inside and the door was locked behind them, they couldn't have gotten out of the room.
And inside that 8-by-8 room, my understanding is there were only a few items. There was a box spring. Was there a desk inside that room as well? A small desk?
Yes, there was a small desk with a folding chair and some textbooks, some children's books that investigators believe belonged to the teenager who was missing, as well as the bucket. There were sheets on the mattress as well as a pillow, and the Ring doorbell camera was mounted on the ceiling.
So you've got the camera on the ceiling, the bed, the desk, and then the bucket, because presumably if you're locked in there for 18 hours at a time. Okay, I want to bring in our other guest that is joining us at this moment. Dr. Judy Ho is with us. She's joining us in in Los Angeles, California. Clinical forensic neuropsychologist and associate professor at Pepperdine University. Dr. Judy Ho, great to see you. Parenting, not an easy job, right? There are times where you can get overwhelmed as a parent. You know, if you have one, it's tough enough. If you have two, it's man to man. You've got 3 or 4 in the house, you're playing zone. I get it. What do you think it would take for a parent to be pushed to the point where, hey, we've got a problem with a child. We need to put that child into the garage. To me, that seems to be a level of extreme duress, or I don't know how you get there. I'm wondering what's going through the mind of a parent at that moment.
Well, Vinny, as a new parent myself, it is both the hardest and most rewarding job I've ever had in my entire life. And I think most parents listening to this, watching this right now, would say there's no reason that I would ever do that to my child. No matter how difficult they become, I'm not going to do something that technically is a chronic form of severe abuse. And I understand that part of the argument here that the lawyer of the family is making is that perhaps this child had reactive attachment disorder. This is a rare disorder that is related to traumas and stresses that the child may have experienced in a very early part of their life, possibly before this child was ever adopted. And that could cause a lot of different difficulties, including behavioral problems, difficulties attaching and relating to the parents. But even so, and you made this point already earlier, these are highly educated and financially resourced parents. They have had this child in their custody for a long time because this child is now a teenager. The manifestations of reactive attachment disorder happen between 9 months and the age of 5. So they've had plenty of time to try to reach out for resources, talk to professionals, find other ways to manage the escalating behaviors. And perhaps they wouldn't have escalated to the point that they did when the parents decided, well, maybe our last resort is just to lock him in a room and give him a bucket to do his business in. I think that there's no good excuse that we can really come up with where they've had all of this time to try to get educated, manage the child's behaviors with professional help. Why didn't they go there? Especially if all of the signs of this type of disorder should have manifested very, very early on, including when they first adopted the child at 17 months.
Katherine Kokal still with us, journalist with the Palm Beach Post. Katherine, how about the child? Do we know, like, did the child have problems outside of the home? Were there behavior issues? Was the child running into problems with either teachers or administrators or law enforcement or with other children? Do we know if any of that sort of was manifesting itself in the child's life?
Absolutely, it was. The child ran away twice in the 2 months leading up to the family's move back to Jupiter. And so during both of those times, police reports were made by parents. They had a history of running away. But in a letter that Timothy Ferreter's attorney wrote to the court the day before the couple was arrested, she detailed some of the behavioral issues that were going on with the child. They pushed family members, allegedly causing fractures and other injuries. Siblings and their parents. Nellie King, Timothy Ferreter's attorney, says that the teenager once attacked another classmate and searched ways for people to die on their school electronics. So these issues were kind of manifesting both at home and at school. Some of the other signs that Nellie King pointed to in her letter to the court were that the child was torturing animals and making racist remarks in class. So those were kind of examples that she gave of escalating bad behavior. Nellie King told the court that there was documentation submitted that the child was suffering from reactive attachment disorder. And Tracy Ferreter herself told Jupiter police officers that the child had both ADHD and reactive attachment disorder. ADHD obviously much more common. But reactive attachment disorder, just as was stated, can start in early childhood, and there are signs that these problems were escalating as the child grew into teenage years.
Okay, we've got a lot more to dive into this hour. Katherine Kokal going to stay with us. Dr. Judy Ho is staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this family, get some more analysis about, well, what happens to a child that gets locked in an 8x8 box in the garage? I mean, does that help the situation? I can't imagine it does. Like, how is that a solution? We'll talk about that, plus coming up next hour.
In Orlando, Florida, a brand new live trial on Court TV. Michael Redlick marries his stepdaughter Danielle. They stayed together for 17 years until he ends up dead in their home.
I believe deceased. I just, he's stiff and he's wounded. He might have had a heart attack.
What exactly happened? Murder, self-defense, or a heart attack? What will her attorney say?
You will hear about one particular incident where Michael punched her in the face, bruised her face, and chipped her tooth.
Tonight, we break down the latest in Florida versus Danielle Redlick.
Proof underwear at Knix.com.
Three-car garage. On the single car garage was where there was a room built in there, but never went in the house or in the garage. Just could see it from the outside.
You could see that structure in the garage. And again, this structure, an 8x8 wooden box that was custom built for the garage, and apparently is where the adoptive child, one of four, would be locked in. And you get the lock is on the outside. So if you're on the inside, you can't get out if it's locked from the outside. And inside there, you've got a bed. There's a camera that's watching you up above. You got a little desk, you got a couple books, you got a light, single light, and you've got a bucket. I mean, allegations that he was, or she, was locked in this room for 18 hours at a time, locked in there when not at school. Let me bring back in our guest, Katherine Kokal, journalist from the Palm Beach Post in West Palm Beach, joining us tonight, who knows more about this story than anyone. who is not directly part of the story, obviously. Dr. Judy Ho, clinical psychologist, neuropsychologist, associate professor at Pepperdine. Let me ask you, Dr. Judy Ho, we've got allegations here, a child is acting out. Child has attempted to run away, but then is locked in an 8x8 wooden structure inside the garage. What sort of impact can that have on a teenager? Being one of four, you're the one who gets locked in the garage.
Well, Vinny, first of all, we don't know exactly what clinical condition he truly suffers. I don't know if he actually had an evaluation that says he definitely has reactive attachment disorder. But if he does, that's a trauma-related disorder. The only risk factor for that rare disorder is trauma and neglect. So if you're going to lock this teenager in a room 18 hours, not giving him feelings of basic safety, provoking that feeling of having to be in fight or flight all the time, it's clearly going to make those trauma reactions worse. So some of these escalating behaviors that have been reported at school and at the home, that's all going to worsen as a result of this locked treatment. The only kind of treatment that's going to work if an individual has such a disorder is positive parenting that helps to foster safe and protective relationships, not only with the parents, but also with other adults and peers in their life. They also need to receive trauma-focused therapy to work through the traumas they've experienced. And unfortunately, it sounds like the parents contributed to this trauma rather than actually helping the child through it if he did come to their family with earlier trauma experiences before 17 months of age.
And how about the dynamic that there are 3 other children in the home? How does this affect those other 3 children? How would they perceive what's going on inside this home? That there's there's 3 of us were inside, and then one goes to the garage, to this wooden room.
Well, if these other 3 children were relatively spared from actual direct trauma or abuse, there is still the trauma that is a result of watching this happen to one of their siblings. And to meet the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, it doesn't have to just happen to you. Witnessing somebody that you care about going through trauma is likely going to also provoke such a reaction in some individuals. And I believe that maybe these children also feel unsafe, that perhaps if they behave in a certain way or do something that might be perceived as out of line, that something similar could happen to them. So I believe that these children are most likely going to need some professional resources and therapy to get through what they witnessed.
Now, let me ask you, Katherine, the structure down there in their home in Jupiter was built relatively recently, right? We understand that, but had this child ever, is there any evidence or anything to suggest that when they lived in Arizona or when they previously lived down in South Florida, whether there was a similar type of structure that this child was subjected to being in?
Absolutely. Part of the reporting process of understanding what happened here was calling every single homeowner that's lived in a home that the Ferreters have lived in the last 20 years, actually. And so prior to moving to Arizona, the Ferreters actually lived just a couple streets over from where they live in the same neighborhood. So inside that Egret Landing neighborhood, it's one big loop, and they lived just a couple of blocks from where they bought a home and moved into this year. That home did not have any sort of demolition permits that were assigned to it or any building permits during the time they lived there or in the months after they moved out. However, in an interview with police right after the Ferreters were arrested, the home's new owner, who they bought it in February of 2017, so several years ago now, said that he had a room removed from the garage that matched the description of the room in the Egret Landing home that the Ferreters lived in until they were arrested. His real estate agent allegedly highlighted it in a tour of the home as a bonus room. He bought that home for about $650,000 and had that room demolished. Again, there was no trace of this in the public records. So when I looked at schematic drawings of the home, there was no evidence that this room existed, and they never pulled any demolition permits to have it taken down. So we know that the person who bought that home after the Ferreters lived in it in 2017 said that they had a similar structure. We did not find any public records that showed that they had something similar in their home in Arizona. However, in interviews with the police, the teenager told police that they were locked up frequently in Arizona too. So we know that the demolition permits and the building permits don't always match up in cases like this. The Ferreters did not pull a building permit to construct this room in December, but they did pull a demolition permit to have it removed just a few weeks after they were arrested. So we know that this has existed in at least one of their homes before, and the child has hearkened back to similar experiences when they lived in Arizona.
Dr. Judy Ho, let me ask you, could you potentially see, and we don't know all the facts in the case, obviously, that'll come out, in court, in motions, etc. But could you see anyone in your profession counseling this family and suggesting, hey, listen, maybe a way to punish or a way to protect the other children or protect other members of the household, maybe you should have a little separate secured area for the child?
Absolutely. There are a number of different behavioral management strategies to deal with children who have escalating behavioral problems, even those that have violent behaviors, as has been reported for this particular teenager. And we have evidence-based treatments for this. Doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It's going to be a process. It's going to be hard. It's going to require hard work from the parents. But this is the biggest and saddest thing about this case, is that the parents did not reach out earlier to get those resources. And I understand that sometimes people are just at a loss for what to do, but it sounds like this has been a long pattern. This is not some idea they just came up with and only have been doing this for 2 or 3 months. It appears that they have been utilizing this as a form of behavioral management for years, when it's actually provoking more trauma in this particular teenager and the children in the family. And so absolutely, getting into professional treatment with a very well-experienced expert in behavioral management strategies, especially for children who have a possibility of having reactive attachment disorder as well as violent behaviors, is key here.
But could you see part of the plan or the treatment by a professional being, hey, listen, maybe you guys should build some secure room in your home and have an area where you can keep the child away from everybody else for a certain amount of time? Would that ever be a part of a plan?
Not a room per se, especially not one with a door that only locks and can be unlocked from the outside. But there are techniques where you utilize a timeout chair, a timeout area where there isn't anything else. You can't just send a child to their room with their video games and TV. It has to be an area where they're not likely to hurt themselves with any objects nearby, where they essentially can sit and actually calm down, learning emotional regulation strategies before they can be brought out to socialize again with the rest of the family. But not a room, not a locked room. That would not be any kind of known evidence-based treatments for somebody who has behavioral difficulties.
Katherine, let me ask you, at any point, was this structure that was in the garage, I've seen online some pictures that purport to be the structure. Does it still exist? Do we know if it's still in the home?
No, it does not. It was demolished on March 5th, and I interviewed the demolition company that took care of that for the Ferreters. They got the call from the Ferreter family on February 20th. Was remarkably quick after they were arrested. They wanted this room to be demolished. I checked with Jupiter Police, and that was not an issue with disturbing a crime scene or anything like that. It had already been processed, but it no longer exists in their home. And just to kind of piggyback on what Dr. Ho is talking about, when I spoke with child psychologists on reactive attachment disorder and realistically how to deal with something like that, especially when you have escalating or potentially violent behaviors, many told me that the tough love, keep them away from other kids in the family, keep them away from their friends, that approach was really outdated. And so physical restraint and reattachment treatments have not shown to help kids with reactive attachment disorder. And so the kind of tough love or isolation therapy that the Ferreters may have been employing here, child psychologists today say that that is not the right way to handle this. So we do know that the room has been taken down, and so the children are also not in the Ferreters' custody anymore. They are in the custody of the state, and they're in the process of being placed with a family member.
Katherine Kokal is going to stay with us. Dr. Judy Ho, I know you have to run. We appreciate your time tonight. Great to hear your insight. When we come back, we've got the statement from the Ferreter's attorney. Received it this afternoon. Trying again to understand that question. The answer to that question, why? Why? Why would you ever think it's a good idea or appropriate to lock your child in the garage in a wooden structure with a bed, a camera, and a bucket?
Truebill today.
Nice.
The town of Jupiter, they had their employees there in the midst of this SWAT raid on the house. So now that's another governmental entity, and also the school district police. They have not sent preservation letters to those two entities, and there may be more involved that I'm not aware of.
Those are the arguments being made today inside the courtroom by Nellie King. She is the attorney representing the Ferreters who've been charged with this aggravated child abuse. And it all stems from what they built in their home, in the garage, an 8x8 wooden box that their adopted child was placed in. And again, it's a wooden box with a camera, a bed, and a bucket inside. So what exactly is Nellie King and the Ferreters saying? Like, what is the defense? Why would you do this? What is the defense to this type of behavior? I think we got a pretty good idea, because we got a statement today from Nellie King. Let's take a look at it on the screen, and I'll read it to you. And here it is. This is from the Ferreter's attorney. The false narrative created by this overzealous detective will be fully exposed at trial. Had a credible investigation been conducted, Detective Sharp would know about the dangerous and escalating behaviors of this adolescent and the threat he posed to family and classmates. He would know the young man had been diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, a circumstance tracing back to his adoption out of Vietnam. He would know the child came to the Ferreters having been fed a diet of sugar water, covered in scabies, and up to the point lacking basic human contact, much less love. He would know RAD is commonly diagnosed among children adopted from impoverished foreign countries. He would know there are many more families out there like the Ferreters who have been terrorized by the children they love, desperate to protect their families. All right, there it is, laying it out. The other side of the story, their answer to the question, why would you ever do this? Why would you build that box and lock the child in the box in the garage? Still with us tonight, journalist with the Palm Beach Post, Katherine Kokal, and joining us now in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, former prosecutor, former assistant state attorney, counsel for Ben Crump Law, and trial attorney Sue Ann Robinson. And joining us in Staten Island, New York, former prosecutor Jonah Luzzi. Great to see everyone tonight. All right, Sue Ann, let me begin with you. Does that sound like a legal justification, a reason to build that box in the garage to protect your family who's being terrorized by a child that they love?
False imprisonment, good night, Vinny. False imprisonment and aggravated child abuse all focus on intent, like most crimes. And if there is an intent to terrorize this child, then all of that, the statement, everything they're saying is for naught. Discipline is generally used for teaching, not to terrorize a child. So I think that the attorney
I
is
think
gonna
what
have
they're saying is that they were being terrorized by this child. The child is inside, and I understand it, right? You've got four children, and you've got one now, they're saying, is terrorizing this family, is threatening this family. I need to protect my family, and that is going to be what will be uncovered during the course of this trial, Sue Ann?
Yeah, I think there would be a paper trail. There would have to be Baker Acts, the child being committed, them calling police in order to try and resolve different situations with the child. Even school records would ferret out whether or not he had an ongoing issue and was threatening kids. So the attorney did rightfully say that an investigation will show these things. So when that's done, if that evidence is there, then that gives them more of a defense. If there's a documented mental illness, if there's a history of him making threats and things like that, then it's possible that they can say their intent was to keep the child away from other people for safety reasons and not to terrorize him.
Joan Aluzzi, your thoughts about what we are hearing tonight. I mean, she's a great attorney, Nellie King. From the Ferreter's attorney, saying that all of this is some false narrative. You've got an overzealous detective who didn't do the research and didn't figure out what was really going on here and why this box was built. But it seems from what Katherine is telling us tonight, this box wasn't just a recent thing. This box had sort of been like standard operating procedure for this family.
Well, Vinny, it's obvious to me that this lawyer is trying to use the detective as a scapegoat, indicating that he was overzealous, and that's why this case has been brought. But obviously that is not the case. And what we're not talking about as well is the multiple beatings, how it was that they were not only locking this child up, but also regularly beating him and viciously beating him, number one. Number two, there were other children in the home, and those other children were sort of banding together to hack into the parents' computer because they too were most likely terrorized and traumatized by what was happening to their siblings.
So, Katherine, let me ask you, and we're hearing, you know, the statement from Nellie King. Was there a threat posed? What was the nature, do we think, of these threats to the family and the threats to classmates? Because if the child's locked in the box during the day, the child was being let out to go to school, wasn't he?
That's our understanding, yes. And I think it's important to note, Vinny, that both Timothy and Tracy Ferreter have pleaded not guilty. And so that is kind of the table that is set as we start to see some of these motions coming through from Ms. King. And so in her letter to investigators the day before the couple was arrested, she detailed some of these escalating threats to the family members and to classmates. And so, but she didn't really start and end at the physical. I mean, she talked about, you know, racist threats that the child was making in class, statements that scared his classmates. He, at one point, was searching on a school-provided device, how to kill girls. Those are the things that Nellie King points to in her letter as signs that this child was not safe to be around other people. There are, in the police report, some records of the child pushing and shoving both Tracy and their siblings. At one point that caused a fracture. We're not entirely sure who suffered the broken bone in that situation because, as you can imagine, these reports are really heavily redacted. So these are just in the last 3 months, too. Remember that the Ferreters moved back to Jupiter in late December. And so the police reports that we have are only from those 3 months. The police were never called to the Ferreters' home when they lived in Jupiter from 2014 to 2017. And so when we review these things, they happened, you know, very quickly back to back to back. When the child was in Tucson, they also apparently had a history of stealing. There was an incident on Thanksgiving Day where the child stole money from their sibling. And when the parents asked the child to go outside, well, they talked to the sibling, the sister, about the stolen money. That is when the teenager ran away. Then they were found by Pima County sheriff's deputies in an apartment building in the lobby with what they believed to have been stolen credit cards. They contacted the person who owned the credit cards, and they didn't press charges. But this type of behavior kind of was dropped throughout the teenager's history, and Nellie King would say that it was escalating to the point where the child was a danger.
All right. Katherine Kokal, appreciate all your insight and all your time tonight. Thank you so much. Sue Ann Robinson, Jonah Lewis are going to stay with us. When we come back, we're going to talk more about those hacked emails that Joan spoke about. Also, coming up next hour.
On the docket tonight in Palm Beach County, Florida, the killer clown trial. Sheila Keene Warren accused of dressing up like a clown, shooting Marlene Warren, and then marrying her husband.
I want the truth and, an end to this tragic thing.
Motion for protective order, motion for production of all communications regarding evidence unlawfully obtained.
It's the fact that they unlawfully obtained it through one of the witnesses who is a kid.
You're asking to suppress something for the state to use that they don't have, that they've never seen, which takes me back to what I said at the beginning. This seems premature to me.
Fascinating part of this case right now is that the attorney for the Ferreters is trying to get rid of what happened was that apparently the other children have been accused of hacking into their accounts and then getting information and sending it to their lawyer, from the children's lawyer from Family Services. Take a look on the screen here, folks. Making a motion for a protective order, motion for production of all communications regarding evidence unlawfully obtained, motion to remove the attorney ad litem from the case. Personal Google accounts of the defendant, Timothy Ferreter, and or the co-defendant were hacked into one or more of these children. The subject obtained by the minor children unlawfully without consent and via this Google account hack was then transmitted electronically to the attorney, Kristen Hernan, with the Foster Children's Project / Legal Aid, and or Cara Fasco, a DCF Child Protection Investigator Supervisor. Unbelievable development.